How did I accidentally become an art dealer? This is a question I get asked sometimes because, if in all honesty, when I was about 10, if I was going to map out my entire career, I wouldn't have imagined I'd be sat in my art gallery selling artwork. How did this happen? Well, I started my career in bicycles. I basically, even wearing a bicycle t shirt today, I quit college trying to become a professional downhill mountain bike racer. I went to buy an inner tube from a local bike shop on my way back from a job interview at a bank, and I got a job working in sales in this bike shop. And one thing I've always loved about retail is talking to people. Um, I get a real sense of satisfaction from my job, getting to know the person in front of me, understanding their problem, and giving them some solutions. So, a few years into this, which was way longer than I anticipated being in bikes, as I always thought I was going to be some kind of Wall Street trader or something, um, I had a South African guy in front of me. Nice guy, got chatting. I said, "What is it you do?" And he said, "Oh, I'm a painter." And I thought he meant like a painter and decorator. No, artist. Interesting. Always had a love and interest in art, but I hadn't really met many artists. This is going back to about 2007, I think this was. Start chatting to the guy, found him quite engaging and charismatic, and he was into mountain biking, and he was going to go and do the always had a dream of doing the Cape Epic mountain bike race in South Africa, which is the hardest multi-day stage race, iconic, epic event. And anyway, I got chatting to him. I was more interested in his art, and so I said, "Oh, what kind of paintings do you do?" And he showed me a picture on his phone, and there was something about this painting that I really loved. And he said, "Oh, I've got something like this in the car. Do you want to have a look?" So I walked out to his car, and he produced this fantastic red tree. And there was something about it that I really loved. I just connected with it. You know, when destiny tells you, I have to have this. Um, this point, didn't really know even how much it cost. And he wasn't trying to sell me this painting. But I said, "Look, if I wanted to buy this, how much would it be?" And he said, "Well, look, I can do you a bit of a deal at last year's price. It's about £1,500. And at the time, I was married. And so I called my then wife and said, "Look, sounds a bit weird. Met a guy, showed me a painting in the back of his car, and I really, really want to buy it. It's £1,500. She said, "What? Are you on crack? No, you cannot buy this painting." And I felt instantly destroyed by this news. And so I took Richard's details, and he and I became friends over the next 5 years. And every time he came to the UK, he would stay at his uncle and aunt's house in Pangbourne, where he'd base himself for his European and British gallery shows and exhibitions. Um, we became very close friends. I got a real understanding of his inertia and drive and the progress that his career was making. And I was absolutely desperate to buy some of his artwork. I could see the trajectory that he was on. My ex-wife spent 5 years telling me that I couldn't buy his artwork. I had an opportunity to open a bike shop of my own with a friend of mine, and it was during this time when I was sort of opening this bike shop that I found out that my then wife was having an affair and a gambling problem and things, and so we broke up, which I think was on a Friday, and by the following Thursday, I owned the Red Tree and another piece by Richard Scott, um, which I hold very dear to this day. And anyway, this isn't how I became an art dealer, but this is an interesting bit of backstory. Um, because what happened next was with my bike shop, I started assembling a series of ambassadors, some interesting people that weren't just boring racing cyclists. There was a film director, a couple of racing car drivers, a guy that's climbed Everest, a guy that's done both the North Pole and the South Pole and the Marathon de Sable, and they would come and tell their story to a room full of customers and interested people with some drinks and canapes and things. And Richard had come over, and we spent an evening together just talking about what we were going to do. And I was like, look, you've got an interesting life. You've done the Cape Epic a couple of times, and he was in the process of doing it a third time, and he produced all of the artwork for the Cape Epic, which was really cool. He's done a great series of prints and things about this. And so I'd asked him, look, do you want to come and tell your life story at my bike shop, and maybe bring along a few paintings and things, and we can have a bit of a studio tour. And so we packed the place out. There's about 50 people in the room. This is going back to 2016, I think it was. And 5 minutes before we did this show, I was looking around at all of these artworks on easels, and I said to him, Richard, if I sell one of your paintings tonight, will I get some commission? And he told me how much I'd get. And I was like, wow, okay, I'm selling some paintings. And so we did. We ended up selling a few paintings on the night. It was very exciting, lots of happy people. And so he was quite impressed at the end of it. He was like, James, that was amazing. You know, normally we take emails and back and forth a bit and then eventually might sell something, but we were going around closing on the night. And in my world, that's pretty rare. And so the following year, we did a purposeful art show where we actually had far less people, but it was marketed as an art show. And in fact, we only had 22 people there. And to this day, that was the highest grossing art show of Richard Scott's career in my bike shop in Surrey. And so this is where I started to pivot and think, okay, there's something here. I want to do more with art. And so I started doing some pop-up shows in some pretty prestigious places like Fox Hills Country Club, Pennyhill Park, Wentworth Golf Club, and also Vivendi Supercar Club, and a couple of others. I started attracting more and more people to sell their work, and eventually I thought, you know what, it would be really cool if I had my own gallery. Now, what's next blew my mind,